Hello everyone, this video will cover Module 2. Module 2 is mainly over the Greek kind of background to their civilization, a little bit about Greek culture and society, and some of the sources where some of our myths come from. And so you'll be reading a couple more chapters, and you will also be looking at critical approaches to understanding literature, and that is a chapter at the end of the textbook. So let me show you what you'll be working on. In this module, you only have two assignments. One of them is a readings quiz, and the other one's this myth criticism assignment, which I will be explaining in a little bit more detail here. So your readings are pretty simple. They kind of follow from chapter 1, giving us some cultural context of our classical Greek myth, and then a little bit more of the development of classical myth. And so you'll see some references to things that you probably are familiar with. So it talks a little bit more about Homer and the Iliad and the Odyssey, and it goes through some of the sources of our Greek myths, so kind of interesting background there. And then the last chapter I want you to look at is the theories of myth interpretation. There are a lot of theories of myth interpretation, and so they're not on the quiz for this unit, but they are needed for the myth criticism assignment. So as you're doing your reading, go ahead and look through chapter 25. Really just kind of an overview glance at it would be a good idea, so that when you get to that assignment, it makes a little bit more sense. I also have a video here that goes over some theoretical approaches to discussing literature and mythology in particular that might help, because this is probably the hardest part for students to wrap their heads around. When we're talking about theoretical approaches to reading something, we're dealing with theory, so it's not tangible, and it can be sometimes confusing. So the readings quiz, though, that covers module 1 and 2 readings. So chapter 1, which you read in module 1, and then chapter 2 and 3. So those are all the questions that you'll see on this quiz, and this is our first readings quiz. You'll see quite a few readings quizzes in this class, and they're all set up the same. You can take them as many times as you want. The highest score is recorded, but keep in mind, if you take the quiz more than once, you may get different questions as you take them. So it might be a good idea to take it a couple of times just to get some practice with the quiz, but also because the exams pull from the quiz pools. So there is a chance that you might get the same types of questions on the exams. So then this is your first writing assignment that is specific for literature, and we're looking at myth criticism. You're reading the theories of myth interpretation, which is chapter 25 at the end of the textbook, and it basically just goes over different types of criticism. So this is something that some students have trouble wrapping their heads around, and this is a very common topic discussed in literature. So the idea with a criticism is it is a lens through which you can look at something. So you could use a criticism to discuss a piece of literature. You could also use a criticism to discuss a piece of art, or a newspaper article, or whatever. We can use theories of interpretation in a modern context, and we can also look at ancient work as well. And so the idea is that it's just a different way of thinking about the same thing. One of the theories that has gotten a lot of traction right now is critical race theory. So that is just what critical race theory is it's just one way to study something. And there are a whole bunch of different ways that you can study different kinds of things, typically applied to literature and in the humanities. And so that's where we see a lot of that. So in this case, we're looking at theories of myth interpretation, and your task is to pick 5 of them and just look at the information in the textbook. You are welcome to look outside of the textbook for more information about them, but I'm not expecting you to do extensive research. So all I want is the name of the criticism, like where does it come from, and some of the history behind it. Some of them are offshoots of other types of criticism. So there might be an actual person who created this criticism. Then again, it might just be something that it came out of a philosophy or came out of a theory that's just kind of common for that time period. So you want to give us names if possible, time periods if possible, and then how is it used to interpret myths? So what are some of the theories behind it? And then why do you think it's important? And what similarities do you see with the other criticisms that you've chosen? So that last question, you will kind of have all 5 of your criticisms chosen in order to answer that question with the other ones. So some students find it's easier to sort of pick criticisms that fall within the same section of the textbook. So there's like theories of the 19th and 20th centuries, those all kind of go together. And there are some other kind of older theories, medieval and Renaissance theories. And so you can, or the allegories are all fairly similar, historical versus moral versus natural. Those are often a little bit easier for students to understand how someone could use that in order to study a myth. So that's all you're doing for this assignment. You're not actually having to go and look at any myths at this point. We're just interested in the different ways that we can study or interpret those myths. So you're just doing 5 of those. If you have any questions, if you're not certain about what you've chosen, whether or not it counts as a theory of interpretation, you're more than welcome to email me. Otherwise, that is your first actual writing assignment for the class. So hopefully you are doing well. If you have any questions, send me an email. Otherwise, have a great week.